Oh, you're here. Thank Pluto. The sun was out for a bit earlier. Ugh. And you always bring the rain with you somehow. Give me a nice, gloomy, rainy day and an esoteric grimoire or cursed tome and a cup of tea any day. And a cat to curl up in my lap, obviously. Speak of the devil and she doth appear. Look who it is, Cleopatra, your favorite person. Now help yourself to a cup of blackberry leaf and candied ginger tea. Sit back, relax, and let me share some new, strange stories here on Madame Strangeways. My Encounter with the Black Dog of Hanging Hills by Tristan Mason. Let me preface this story by stating this is one of the weirder experiences in my life because it's a shared one. I'm open to any natural explanations as I'm thinking it might be some shared psychological experience. This is the best explanation I could come up with. Anyway, here's the story. In Meriden, Connecticut, about 10 minutes outside of where I live, there exists a range of mountainous trap rock ridges called Hanging Hills. The easiest way to get up them is to park in a wooded, mountainous park called Hubbard Park and take a trail that starts with a slightly intimidating passenger bridge that crosses over the highway. I am afraid of heights, but always try to challenge myself by going hiking and putting myself in slightly uncomfortable situations to overcome my fears. In the spring of 2014, my wife, girlfriend at the time, and I decided to take our umpteenth hike up Hanging Hills to see Castle Craig, a stone tower that stood at the end of the main trail and overlooked the cliffs, the city of Meriden, and Quinnipiac Valley. For the umpteenth time, we launched into a discussion on the drive there about the legend of the Black Dog. I find ghost stories that have any shred of historical reality to them intriguing because most representations of ghosts on TV or social media these days involve people becoming easily scared by shaking or noises in an abandoned location. The legend of the Black Dog is an exception because it involves the legend itself and a story of two geologists from the late 1800s encountering it and actually documenting it. The legend has it that you see the Black Dog of Hanging Hills once for joy, twice for sorrow, and 3 times for death. There are plenty of legends of black dogs in folklore that tell a similar tale. The two geologists, W.H.C. Pynchon and Herbert Marshall, were conducting research of the area in the winter of 1891 when they encountered the Black Dog. According to the story, Pynchon had seen it once and Herbert twice before. Herbert didn't believe in the legend. After ascending the hills again alone, Herbert supposedly fell to his death. I remembered the image of the Black Dog from W.H.C. Pynchon's story very clearly every time we hiked up the mountain. This time was no different. That particular day, my girlfriend and I encountered a hiker on the trail that was letting his black dog, without a collar, roam loose. We weren't sure whether it was to mess with people or not. The dog wasn't like the one that was depicted in Pynchon's story. Rather, it was bigger, like a lab terrier mix, and friendly, too. It came up to us and started panting at our legs. "Sorry about that," the hiker said as he caught up to the dog and us. "Not at all. I bet you love having a little legend with you around here." Oh, yeah, the ghost dog, the hiker said, forcing a laugh and grimacing as if he had heard that one too many times before. As he walked away, my girlfriend made a comment about my obsession with the stupid dog and not wanting to hear about it. We made our way to the Castle Craig about 20 minutes later. Unlike the trails off the highway, the main trail from the park is not long or difficult other than a large hill at the end of it. We took pictures on top of the tower and by the cliffside, not really thinking anymore about the black dog. We had made so many trips up to the tower and seen so many hikers with black dogs that the legend almost seemed like a joke at that point. Want to take the main trail down or the road? I asked as we finished up taking pictures and drinking whatever water and Gatorade we had left in our packs. The road, she insisted. We can see that river. The road leading up to Castle Craig is typically taken by cars and bikers. We sometimes hiked down it to catch a glimpse of the Quinnipiac River on the way back to the park. Despite it being a warm April day, there were very few cars and bikers on the way down. It was nice and quiet. About a quarter of a mile into our walk, my girlfriend tugged me on the shoulder and pointed to a figure on the side of the road between some shrubbery. It stood about 10 feet ahead of us. "What the hell is that?" she said. I took a step forward, but she tugged on my shirt and shook her head. "Is that what I nodded. All I could do was nod. The figure was small and resembled a black dog with floppy ears and a hot dog tail, much like the one in Pynchon's illustration. I wouldn't have thought much of it if not for the fact the figure was blurry. It wasn't the distance between us that made it blurry, and there weren't any fog-related conditions that day. It was almost as if Mother Nature had taken the dog in a Photoshop program and used the blur effect on it. Even when I took a step closer, to my girlfriend's hesitance, it still looked blurry. We were frozen otherwise, though, and didn't think to take a picture of the figure. There was an unknowing understanding between us that we shouldn't approach and just wait for it to cross. As the figure crossed the road, it didn't look at us. It just dawdled with its nose to the ground. For the rest of the hike, we were silent. We both knew what we saw, but couldn't put it into words. It was only after a while that I said I should have taken a picture, but deep down, I felt it was a good thing that I didn't. Seeing the figure wasn't frightening, but it wasn't pleasant either. We have been back to Hanging Hills many times since. We never encountered any luck or sorrow, just a memory of a little blurry black dog and an understanding that when you see an actual paranormal entity with someone else and understand what it is, there isn't really a question about it. I've read many stories posted online since about the black dog. Few have described what we saw, though. Black dogs run loose in the park all the time, and a number of the encounters we read about seem like fabrications or just encounters with stray dogs. If you live in the area or have a similar story, I'd be very interested in hearing yours as well. I haven't met or spoken with a person who has a similar experience. I also haven't been able to objectively rule out what I saw. I'm open to any scientific explanations on collectively seeing blurry figures in a shared experience. It would be disappointing, but interesting to know about a more logical explanation, too. Okay, Tristan, we established that seeing the ghostly black dog once brings joy. You were saying, well, it didn't bring joy, it didn't bring sorrow. I would pose the question to you. Would you and your girlfriend seeing the dog when she was so sick of hearing you talk about the legend? Would that not bring you some joy? Being able to maybe not say aloud, I told you so, but secretly, quietly, with your eyes, unspoken, I told you so. Doesn't that bring you some joy? That you were right. You were right to be obsessive about the history and the legend of the black dog. Right? Come on. It must have brought you just a little bit of joy, a shred of joy, even if it was also unsettling and may have permanently altered your worldview. The fact that when you both saw the black dog, that it was blurry. Like, I liked how you said, like, nature had taken it into Photoshop and applied like a blur filter to it. That's how blurry it is. Like, I've never seen that. To be fair, I don't need glasses to see on a hike. However, if I did need glasses to see on a hike, then everything would be blurry and not just this one fabled dog of legend. So it's crazy that it's just the dog that's blurry. So I don't know how you explain that if nothing else is blurry. Like, even if the dog was far away, it would be an atmospheric distance situation with your eyeballs, not just the dog being blurry. Maybe the dog had several balloons rubbed on its fur and then let go. And so all of its fur was standing on end, and maybe that gave it the appearance of blurriness. I'm not claiming to understand what happened either. Completely unexplainable. But I do love that you saw it. Maybe it sounds like, oh, be careful what you wish for. And maybe you might be thinking, oh, I kind of wish I hadn't seen it now. But I'm glad that you saw it because you had such an interest in it. And it sounds like it was kind of one of your special interests. And now if someone asks you, have you ever met a celebrity? You can say, why, yes, I have met a celebrity. It was the black dog of Hanging Hills. And actually, he was quite blurry, actually. He was very blurry, but probably nice, did not bark. So not cruel, not rude like some celebrities can be, very down to earth, just a little blurry. I think usually the people that want to see ghosts or the unexplained or the paranormal in general are kind of the people that are allowed to see them the least. They are the last people to see and have an experience because they want it so bad. Whereas in your case, maybe because you wanted to see it or you had such an interest in it and such a curiosity and, I don't know, maybe the black dog could tell that you had done your research and that you were very studious and that your girlfriend was like, please stop talking about the dog. Can we not talk about the dog for 5 minutes? Maybe the dog was like, hey, Tristan, don't worry. I got your back. I got you. Story number 2 by Taylor. I was sitting on my bed, staring into the abyss, questioning, wondering, pleading, when I would wake up from this nightmare. It was late, probably 1 a.m., and I had just gotten home from my grandma's house. Most of my family was there. It wasn't the typical Sunday at Granny's. Nope. This is one I would go on to hate the rest of my life. One day earlier, I was 17 and a week into my junior year of high school. Life was great. I had a great group of friends. On my second year on the dance team, my best friend just got her car, and I had 2 classes with Landon Miller, and it was blatantly obvious the crush was mutual. I woke up earlier than I normally would have after a football game. We would all go to IHOP after the game, and I would just get home sometime the next morning. When I woke up, I had a missed call and text from Jake. Jake is my younger cousin. He was only 12, but always seemed older and more mature than he was. I guess that happens naturally when your mom, my aunt, is not a stable figure in your life. Jake never knew his dad, and none of our family did either. Jake and I were incredibly close. He and his mom lived with us on several times through his 12 years, sometimes for a week and sometimes for months. I always looked at him as a little brother. I didn't call him back right away, but read the message that said, "Ask your dad if he'll take us boarding tomorrow." My parents had a boat, their only redeeming quality, and I learned to water ski before I could write my name. By third grade, I was wakeboarding and never looked back. Jake picked it up quickly too, and we would spend weekends on the lake and hours being pulled around attempting X Games maneuvers and crash landing into the boat's wake. Those are memories I will cherish for eternity. I wanted to respond to him with, "You ask him, he pissed me off again last night," as my dad usually did. But I also remembered Landon mentioned a last hurrah pool party that I definitely did not want to miss. But I said, "Okay, yeah, let me ask." I figured I could fit in both. I didn't ask until that night, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. Because I didn't ask until later, Jake and his friends made plans to go ride their dirt bikes at Folsom Park. It was out in the middle of nowhere and barely an excuse for a park, just some unkempt dirt piles. The draw for Folsom was that there was a path to off-road, which is what most people did. They went off-road so far they ended up on a random county road. Jake was going uphill, throttle down, and when he reached the top, he was struck by an F-150 truck going 75 miles an hour. I was told they rushed him to the emergency room, but would later find out that he was killed instantly. His lungs filled with blood, and he drowned inside his own body, an occurrence known as pulmonary edema. I don't remember much of what happened between being told Jake was being care flighted to the hospital, a brief 10 minutes of being at my granny's house, and the moment I was staring into the abyss, sitting on the corner of my bed, looking at an area of my room that was filled with Jake. The corner by the TV, where we set up a fake music video set and recreated the Mambo No. 5 music video. The beanbag chair that he sat in while I covered him and the entire chair with our Beanie Babies, 132 to be exact, where you could only see his head. No sign of the chair or his body, just an optical illusion of sorts. My shelf, with a stereo on it, we sat next to for hours one summer waiting for Who Let the Dogs Out to play, or to be the 10th caller and win coveted Britney Spears tickets. The window we watched fireworks out of the summer my mom had surgery and we couldn't go watch them IRL. Above that window, hanging from the ceiling, was a gold metallic star about as thick as cardboard and 12 inches in diameter. It had a hole punched in the top with a black curly-cued ribbon dangling around the star. I had received this when I made the dance team, saying my name on one side and 0304 new member on the other. This is how we found out I made it. They turned over the new member side to reveal the names. It was in that moment, as I watched, that the star began blowing dramatically out of nowhere, as if the window had opened, followed by a forceful gust of wind. But I hadn't moved from the corner of my bed. I didn't even feel like I was breathing, much less opening a window. The star then went from dramatically being tossed around to moving just an inch or two, side to side. I felt the air turn cold around me. Then a pressure around my arms. And then I knew Jake had come to tell me goodbye. Taylor, thank you so much for being vulnerable and being brave enough to be vulnerable and sharing that touching story with me for me to share with all the listeners. So thank you so much for that in the first place. And, secondly, I'm so sorry about what happened with Jake. I can't imagine the crushing amount of guilt that you are probably still to this day holding on to, at least a little bit. I think I would be remiss if I did not also specifically tell you that this was not your fault. And obviously Jake agreed that it wasn't your fault, but it definitely wasn't your fault. It's not the butterfly effect. That's not how the world works. And you just have no idea. You could play we could play the what if game all day. What if y'all had both gone out on the water? What if something worse had happened if you had gone out on the water? There's just no end to the amount of what ifs that you could come up with. And I'm sure that you have. I'm sure you have probably exhausted that list in the time since this happened. But just a reminder, you are not responsible for what happened to Jake. I'm so glad that he was able to send you a sign, let you know that he's still there. He's thinking of you too. And I know the last thing that Jake would have wanted would be for you to beat yourself up about it or to feel even remotely responsible. So sweet of him to do that for you. It sounds like he cared about you just as much as you still care about him. I do want to take a moment to share some quick thought correction exercise mantras, you might say, that are featured in this excellent book called Complex PTSD: From Surviving to Thriving. It's by Pete Walker. This is maybe not specific to complex PTSD, but I think this section on guilt can really help you or anyone else that's listening that may also struggle with guilt. Here's just a few that you could try saying to yourself. Feeling guilty does not mean I am guilty. I refuse to make my decisions and choices from guilt. I will not accept unfair blame. Guilt is sometimes camouflaged fear. I feel guilty and afraid, but I am not guilty or in danger. Thank you so much again for sharing this story with me, for being brave enough to be vulnerable. Thank you so much again. And if anyone listening has any thoughts or similar experiences to this story, please go ahead and email it to me at madamestrangeways@gmail.com. That's MADAME